Sherm Chester joined today by Roger Brown from the Union Leader and also his websites, the NewHampshireFootballReport.com and NewHampshireHardball.com. And we have a real special guest today and a friend of Roger's. And it's a Major League Baseball announcer and a New Hampshire native, Tim Neverett. Tim, welcome aboard the Seacoast Sports Forum.
Thanks, Sherm. I appreciate it. Roger, always good to see you. I've probably known Roger about 101 years.
It's been a long time. Longer than
always good to catch up. Yeah.
Well, now, tell us about that connection. Roger, you want to do it, or you want to let Tim tell us about that Nashua connection between you two guys?
Well, Tim played on the second best Pop Warner team in Nashua, as I recall. We're going way back. And yeah, both Nashua High guys, you know?
Yeah, we thought we were the best Pop Warner team, but turned out that we got the silver medal.
So there's a little friendly rivalry that goes back a ways with you guys.
Yeah, I think we were on opposite teams, and then we were on the same team. And I think fortunately, Tim's a year older than me, so you know that makes me feel good. You know,
the Nashua Bucks. That's where we were on the Nashua Bucks.
That's right.
And played a lot of games at Holman Stadium, which is now no longer a football stadium. So, and then we played, of course, in high school there too. So they've shut it down from football. It's baseball only now, but you know, played a lot of baseball in there also in my time in Nashua.
Well, I'm glad Roger put a blurb on New Hampshire Hardball about the book, and I went out and I do audiobooks. I love audiobooks, especially when they're read by the author. And I encourage everybody to go out and get a copy, whether it's the written copy or the audio copy of COVID CURVEBALL by Tim Neverett. And Tim's, we know Tim from the Red Sox, but you were a good luck charm. You went to the West Coast and brought the Dodgers a world championship, man.
You know, it's funny. There's a guy that before Nick Cafardo of the Boston Globe passed away, he has a gentleman out in L.A. who's got Boston connections named Bill Chuck, who used to do the Bill Chuck files in his column all the time. And Bill figured it out that the places I've been, they've all won. And then when I left, they didn't win. So, and others have figured it out too. I've been asked about this a lot because when I was in Pittsburgh, they were brutal. Pirates were not very good. We lost 100 and something games my first couple of years there, each of the years, and then started to get a little better. Then, you know, went to the postseason 3 straight years. I left. They haven't been to the postseason since. When I got to the Red Sox, they were in last place in the East in 2015. And then in 2016, it was the first of 3 straight division titles and a World Series title. And when I left, they got back to the postseason last year, but they still haven't won the whole thing. When I got to the Dodgers, they continued a string of postseason runs. They lost in the division series my first year. My second year, we win the World Series. Last year, we lose in the NLCS. So, you know, things have been, I've seen a lot of winning, fortunately.
Yeah.
And it's been just right place, right time, total luck, but I'll take the coincidence.
Now, in case anybody wants to know how the title was generated, COVID CURVEBALL, the book itself, though, was inspired by a walk with, we see Reggie, your chocolate lab in the background there, a walk up in the White Mountains. That's what inspired you to come up with the title and the project, right?
Yeah, my wife, Jess, is
hey, Jess.
enough to drive. And Reggie and I were up in the White Mountains during quarantine. We decided to get out of Nashua and go up to Bretton Woods and that area, Carroll and, you know, Whitefield. And we like it up there quite a bit. We spend quite a lot of time up there, but we got a cabin up there and had a place we could walk every day. And so we're just walking around and just thinking out loud, out of the box. I said, hey, what about this? Should I do this? Or what do you think of that? And she's like, yeah, you better do that. So I started writing every day. I caught up from the first part of spring training before we were sent home. And then once I went back to spring training 2.0, which was not in Arizona, it was in Los Angeles. We called games off of TV screens and things like that. So, you know, we went back and did that. And then I started chronicling, what was going on every day on a day-by-day basis, wrote it in real time so that by the time the World Series had ended, maybe a week later, the manuscript was done, and we had a publisher already, and they liked the idea, especially since the Dodgers won. That kind of helped. But they went to work on it pretty quickly, and we had it out by the All-Star game in Denver this year.
Well, Roger, I'm going to let you jump in here. I just wanted to mention that one thing you mentioned in the book is your connection going back to your youth with the Dodgers in Nashua, and that's kind of cool. And Roger,
yes, sir.
You're a Roger. Roger is a Dodger fan, no doubt about it. He bleeds the blue for sure. Tell us about those connections.
You go ahead and tell the story, Tim. You were, Holman Stadium. It starts there, right?
Yeah, and my Dodger connection began when I was 7 years old. My brother BJ played for the Nashua Dodgers, the Little League Dodgers in the North End, which was right outside of Holman Stadium, literally, where we played. And I was a bat boy at age 7. And then 2 years later, because I've been with them, I got drafted by them and in the Little League draft. So, everybody who gets drafted in a Little League draft can say they were drafted at one point in their life. So I played for the Dodgers for 4 years. We won a city championship. We're always in the playoffs. We had a bunch of good players. And so that was my Dodger thing. And, my coaches used to say, wear your hat a certain way. When you're on the field, dress a certain way and be proud to be a Dodger. And that's kind of when I felt I learned how to be a Dodger. Then following that, I played for Coffee Post, American Legion, in Nashua. Our home games were at Holman Stadium, and our uniforms happened to be Dodger replica uniforms. They look just like the road uniforms, and so that was kind of a neat thing. I like that. And then once I was in college, my freshman year, we had the Nashua Angels come into town and the Nashua Pirates in the Eastern League, and I was trying to decide whether to play summer ball or intern. I ended up interning, but I started playing summer ball for a team known as the Nashua Dodgers. So, in the Brooklyn Dodgers farm team back in the 40s played at Holman Stadium, in that same stadium. You had players like John Newcomb, Roy Campanella. Walter Alston was the manager of that team in 1941, 42 in there. So, so the Dodgers have always had a connection in Nashua. You go downtown Nashua, there's a big tire store that's been there forever. There's a Dodgers mural that's painted on the wall with Campanella and Newcomb at Maynard and Lesher, right behind City Hall. So there's always been some sort of Dodger connection. And then it goes further. When I was in Las Vegas doing AAA baseball, I was with the Padres AAA team. It was the Las Vegas Stars. They decided that they didn't want to renew with the Padres or vice versa, but the Dodgers came in and were the affiliate. So for a number of years, I broadcast the Dodgers AAA games. So it came back to the Dodgers. And so when the Dodgers offered me the job after the 2018 World Series, I had a chance to come back to Boston and stay with the Red Sox. I wasn't exactly very happy with the situation with the flagship station, and I didn't really know if I wanted to stay at that time, to be quite honest. But when the Dodgers offered me the job, it took me about 10 seconds to say yes. And I'm back being a Dodger again. So there's always been a Dodger element in my life one way or another.
I just wanted to ask, you've been in 2 legendary ballparks, Fenway, obviously on this coast, and now Dodger Stadium, Chavez Ravine. Just compare the feel for those parks, the people.
They're very different. And this is a good question. I've been asked this before. It's hard to describe in some ways, but it's really different, and not in a bad way either way. Fenway is Fenway. People go to Fenway to see the ballpark first. It's just a lot of character. It's old. It's got so much history to it. And, the Red Sox are just they're such a legendary franchise, not only in New England, but around baseball, that, and when they're good, you want to see them win. But when they're not very good, people used to go to see the ballpark. And when I was in college, I used to live 3 blocks from Fenway Park on the other side of Kenmore Square. And the Red Sox were pretty good. They actually went to the World Series in '86, but there were years where they didn't sell out many games. We just walk over, and it was great. We wanted to go to Fenway and experience it. The people, they're a hardy group because the weather is very different from the start of the season to the middle of the season to the end of the season. And that can affect people's moods, as we all know, right? But in Los Angeles, there's tons of parking, never an issue with parking. There's like 365 acres of parking there around the stadium. It's not in a neighborhood. It kind of is, but isn't. It's got its own huge open area. It's a big ballpark. It seats, gosh, I'd say almost 20,000 more than Fenway. I think we can get 52 to 55,000 at Dodger Stadium, and the Dodgers always lead in attendance. People do go to Dodger Stadium for Dodger Stadium, but it's a wonderful experience either way. But you might get the same weather opening day as you do sometime in August or September. I mean, it's just beautiful. And we don't keep a tarp on the field.
Wow.
We don't have to because we don't have rainouts there.
Never, yeah.
And to drop a name on you from New England, Nomar Garciaparra is one of the guys that I get to work with. He's a Southern California guy. He did play for the Dodgers. But one time he and I were on the field my first year. We were down by the batting cage during BP, and it was early in the season, and he started laughing, and he told me a story that Grady Little told him when Grady went to the Dodgers, and he said, "See that blue sky, Nomar?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Every day, every bleeping day, it's like this here." And it's true, and it's absolutely 100% true. So even this year, the times that I work with Nomar, we'd have a beautiful sky, and I'd say, "What did Grady tell you, Nomar?" He goes, "Every bleeping day."
I love it. I love it. Roger, you wanted to talk about the actual season, the COVID season that Tim and his journal. Why don't you throw some questions at him?
Well, first, I'd like to say that the Dodger dog is far superior to the Fenway Frank as well. For what it's worth.
I was going to ask about that too.
I will agree, because if you get the steamed Fenway Frank, it used to be that the bun was wet.
Yeah.
And I didn't like the wet bun, but I do like the Dodger dog.
In regards to the book, Tim, were you thinking about writing a book and you just didn't know what topic it was going to be, or was this just strictly the COVID idea and you went with it?
It was strictly the COVID idea, the season, what it was going to be like, because we didn't know. We had no idea if we'd have a season. We had no idea if we'd play 20 games, 50 games, 100 games. We didn't know. So we just looked at it and said, I'm just going to keep a journal of what's going on, and then clean it up every now and then. Like I'd write at night, and then maybe clean some things up in the morning, and move on to the next day. Take some notes. I took a lot of mental notes. I didn't tell anybody I worked with, because I didn't want anybody going, "Hey, that'd be great for the book," or "Don't put that in the book," or whatever. So I didn't tell anybody till the very last day that we were there. We had a game against the Angels to finish up the regular season. And that's when I went and told my boss and told people I worked with that, "Hey, by the way, I'm thinking about making a book on this season, just so you know." And it's not a tell-all book. It's not it's just, this is how it was during the season on a day-by-day basis. So everybody was good with it. The Dodgers were actually very supportive. They helped me with the photographs. They helped me get it licensed by Major League Baseball, and they were really supportive of the idea. And my fellow broadcasters were, and the manager Dave Roberts was supportive, and he there were some players, Mookie Betts included, that said, "Hey, anything I can do to help." I said, "Yeah, let's take a picture and we'll use it to promote." And they were like, "Yeah, no problem, whatever you need." So everybody was really good about it.
You brought up Mookie Betts. There are a lot of Mookie moments, as you call them, in the book. Give us one or two of those. There's one I think, if you give it, great. If you're not, I'm going to leave it for people to either read or hear on the audio. But some Mookie moments that stand out from you. You saw him here. You saw him on the West Coast now.
Yeah, it's starting to get too many to count. He's been spectacular. He was spectacular as a member of the Red Sox. He's been really, really good as a member of the Dodgers. This year, I think he played hurt quite a bit, and so he didn't quite have the same type of season that, he normally has. But, there's one that's, chronicled in the book when he was with the Red Sox that I'd rather let people read, but it has to do with, something around my family and around my father's death that that was a huge Mookie moment, something he did for my family. That was a little thing for him, but turned out to be a big thing for my mother and other members of my family. But on the field, he made a catch. I can think of another one. He made a catch to end the game against the Padres this past year. That was amazing. Early in the season, he made a throw. I can tell you in 2020, we were in Arizona, and Ketel Marte for Arizona hits one into the right field corner. It's in the first inning. And Torey Lovullo, who was the manager of the Diamondbacks, he was the bench coach of the Red Sox, so he's familiar with Mookie. And he's probably thinking to himself, no, don't try to stretch it to 3. Do not try to stretch it to 3. Well, Ketel Marte tries to stretch it for 3. Mookie fields the ball, spins, and throws in one motion, and he throws a dart from the right field corner to third base on a hop where Ketel Marte was out. And it was, people in the building are like, oh my God. But that wasn't the first. I had seen him do it in Tampa Bay. I had seen him do it in Toronto before. I had seen him do it. I wasn't surprised, but people get surprised at that stuff, and they shouldn't, because he's an amazing athlete and he just does everything the right way on the field. And the thing that I like about him is that he's probably the best base runner in Major League Baseball by far. I don't think there's anybody close. His instincts are incredible. I don't think I've ever seen him get thrown out. Even when he tries to stretch, he knows he's got the bag. So he's been a wonderful guy to watch produce runs, watch defend. And, I told people in Los Angeles it would take Dodger fans about 5 seconds to fall in love with him, and it took about 3.
Well, another thing about the COVID season, and you bring it out in the book, as a broadcaster, you had to kind of relearn the business, learn the new techniques that were coming up to kind of compensate for, lack of being. You had the advantage of over some of actually being in Suite 215, which was a special box they set up for you and Monday and the guys that were doing the broadcast with you. But you had those cardboard cutouts you were dealing with.
Yeah, we didn't get to see their faces either. So we saw the backs of them, and I put a photo of it in the book. So because no one ever saw the backs. So okay, you see these great smiley faces, and they're all bought, for charity, and they all, they turned a negative into a positive. So I know the Dodgers raised a lot of money. I guess probably close to $1 million or something on their cutout sales, but the fact of the matter is, where we sat, they just looked like rows and rows of white tombstones. There was just nothing there. And, they arrived early. They never left. They were pretty stiff. They just didn't do anything until one day when our catcher, Will Smith, hit a screaming home run to left center field and almost knocked the head off of one of them. And the kid whose photo it was, all of his friends saw it on TV. So they're texting the kid, and the kid like puts a social media post out for Will Smith. Will Smith sees it, gets back to the kid, says, "I'll hook you up," and he sent him like a signed baseball.
Wow.
For almost knocking his head off of the cutout. So there's just all kinds of weird, strange things that happened during that season. And being in that ballpark, like when they were on the road and we were there by ourselves, there was like 7 or 8 of us in the entire stadium with the lights off. It was a totally surreal experience. And you're right, we did have to relearn some things. I had fortunately done things off the screen before at a couple of Olympic games, but this was just different when you were doing it on a daily basis when they were on a road trip.
Tim, Oro wrote the foreword, correct?
Yes, he did.
Was the reason for that because he's a broadcaster, or did you want to connect the last championship season to this one?
That's exactly what it was. I wanted to have him bridge 1988 to 2020, and he was the last World Series MVP. So I thought that he'd be the natural guy to do it. And when I brought it up to him, he was very excited to do it and very happy about it. So we did that, and I know the publishing company really liked it when they went through the forward. They were like, "This is one of the more in-depth baseball forwards we've had." So they were really happy with it. You know, Oral's been great about helping me promote the book as well. So he's just a good guy and great guy to work with, and he's got so many stories and so many experiences that he's been a big part of.
Can teach you how to throw a slider too.
Yeah.
Yeah, not a bad slider. Not a bad slider. Although his sinker, I think he told me he struck out the last Oakland A. Who was it? Tony Phillips. I'm trying to remember who it was. Anyway, but I think he the last pitch he threw was a sinker, and we went over that like second by second what that was like throwing the last pitch of the World Series, and he tells the whole story and going through filming the Disney commercial and everything. It's pretty wild stuff. You know, he's just a solid human.
The guy that we're all kind of fond of on this side of, on the East Coast from his days with the Red Sox is your manager for the Dodgers, Dave Roberts. Give us some thoughts about him.
Yeah, Dave's also a real solid guy. Dave is the guy that when I approached him about the book, he said, "Look, let's take some photos." And he said, "Use them any way you want for as long as you want." And he goes, "Anything I can do to help you, let me know." I remember when I was with the Red Sox and we would do the Jimmy Fun Telethon once a year, he would always come on it because he's a cancer survivor. Plus, you know, he and Joe Castiglione are president of each of their mutual admiration societies.
Mm-hmm.
They really like each other a lot. So Castig would always call Dave, and Dave would come on and he'd do the interview, and it was great. But Dave probably never needs to buy dinner in New England again after stealing that base.
Amen.
Keeping the Red Sox alive, and then they come back and beat the Yankees and go on and win the World Series in 2004. So, but as far as, you know, being around him on a daily basis, I couldn't ask for a better manager to be around, to be honest. I mean, I had a really good relationship with Alex Cora. I had a good relationship with John Farrell. But Doc is he's one of those guys that you can talk to about anything, personal stuff, or he'll tell me about his kids, what's going on with his kids. We'll talk about that. Talk about the broadcasting side because he's got experience at that too. In fact, he did some Red Sox games on Nesson when he finished playing. He's very approachable, very easygoing. He understands his position. And really, really does a great job with it. I hope I get to work with him for a lot of years.
I hope so too. You know, that's one thing about the Dodgers. They seem to hang on to the talented managers they've had over the years. Lasorda, Alston, you know, you can go through the list. And I think Roberts will be part of that package for years to come. I really do.
Yeah, and in this day and age where there's more pressure to win.
Yeah.
I mean, if you lose a game, and let's say you lose 2 out of 3 in a series, you've got people screaming and hollering on social media to fire the guy. If you lose a game where the guy comes out of the bullpen and gives up the game-winning hit, well, that's not the manager's fault. He's got to make the moves. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. That's baseball.
I think
they've got all the information. They use the information, and he uses the information pretty well.
I think you've probably seen it firsthand that the managers that succeed in Major League Baseball nowadays, and they don't have to be a certain age, but I think they have to be able to relate to the players that are out there now. I mean, you know, it's a different mindset. The kids coming up, and obviously Dave Roberts has the years of the Dodgers, and same thing I think for Alex Cora with the Red Sox, getting what he needs for responses.
Yeah, and I've seen Dave in action. You know, one of the first things he did my first spring training was I saw him one day in his office and we were talking about stuff, just getting caught up. And he said, "Hey, what are you doing Sunday morning at such and such a time?" And I said, "I guess whatever you're about to ask me is what I'm going to do." And he said, "Yeah." He goes, "I want you to come into the meeting, to the team meeting." He goes, "They're all closed." He goes, "But just walk in." And he goes, "Walk in and stand against the wall." And he said, "I want to introduce you to everybody at one time." And I said, "Okay, great." So I came into the meeting, and he's just, you know, the things that he does, the social things he has the players do, create good team bonding. And, you know, the funny stuff he does. And then he introduces me, and he has this long introduction that he somehow made up. And he called me up and put me on the spot and made me do something in front of the team that was, you know, and it was fun. We had a fun time, but he keeps it loose. The players appreciate it. He does relate to them exceptionally well. And I think that's a big part of managing, is being able to keep it loose when it needs to be loose, especially in this pressure cooker day and age.
Amen to that. Roger?
Yeah, one question about, I mean, we mentioned a lot of names, but we haven't talked about the star of the Dodger organization yet, and that would be Vin Scully. Any impact on your career, Tim? And did you get a chance to rub shoulders with him at all, or was he done by the time you moved to LA?
He was done by the time I moved to LA, but I knew him beforehand. And when I was with the Pirates, my first year with the Pirates, as I walked in, his door was open and he happened to be facing away from the field, looking out in the hallway. And I was looking forward to maybe getting a chance to meet him. But I walked by, and as I passed the doorway, I hear, "Hey, Tim." He knew my name.
Should have had that recorded.
Well, he knew my name, right? And I literally stopped in my tracks. And I don't get starstruck really, but I was like, whoa. Yeah. So I kind of walked backwards and stuck my head in the door. He goes, "Come on in here," and whatever. And so I sat down with him for a while, and we talked, and we did that a few other times too, before he retired. And his last year in 2016, the Red Sox actually went in there. And so I went and saw him again and had pictures taken with him. And during the season, late in the season this year, I was actually driving somewhere, and he called. I was on the phone with my wife, actually. I said, "I don't know who that is. I'll get back to them." And so when I hung up with her, I played the voicemail, and it was Vin. And I said, "Oh my gosh."
I'd like to have one of those for sure.
Yeah. So I got the voicemail from him, and he's just such a wonderful guy. He really is. You can't say enough about him, because he's the face, the voice, the name of the franchise. He comes from the time in Brooklyn, and one of the first games that he ever did, I don't know if people know this story, but it was at Fenway Park when he did Boston University and Maryland. I think it was a bowl game or something like that. And he did it from the rooftop on the third base side. He did the network radio, which was based out of New York. And Red Barber was the sports director of that station. And he assigned Vin the job. Vin, fresh out of Fordham, said he'd gladly do it. Went there and did it. But what the story is that it was freezing cold that day. And Vin had accidentally left his coat back at the hotel. And so he did the entire game freezing. Never once mentioned it. Red Barber got wind of it. He thought Vin did a good job. And then he found out later Vin did it without a coat. And he said, "That's all I need to know." And he hired him to do the Brooklyn Dodgers next. And the rest is history.
Well, speaking of books, there's a book that's out of print, but years ago, when I was thinking about getting into broadcasting, one of the books I got, Red Barber, it was how to do sports broadcasting, and his background. And he mentions how he mentored Vin Scully. And that was his pride and joy to see Vin develop the way he did. And one trick that you probably would appreciate this that Red Barber had was, because he did radio and he painted the pictures, and that's how Vin Scully attributes that. It's painting that picture. When you're in Chavez Ravine and you got the blue sky and the green grass, and make people feel like they're part of it. Radio is a harder, it's a harder medium than the television. It's where everybody's just seeing everything thrown at them. But the deal was that Red Barber had a trick. He had an egg timer sitting on the counter next to him. Yeah. And when that ran out, every 3 minutes, he gave the score. That was one trick he taught Vin Scully. Just make sure you keep people in the game. Don't let them wander off. And when they lose interest, you've lost them. So that was one of the tricks I remember from way back.
That's exactly right, Sherm, because I have a friend in the minor leagues who does the exact same thing, even to this day. He has a little sand timer, and when it runs out, he gives the score and he flips it over and does it again. But you have to give the score on radio quite often because, you know, on television, you're more of a traffic cop and you're more of a, you know, they can see it. So you don't have to say all the same things,
right,
or do all the same things. But on radio, you definitely have to be your own score bug. You have to be the person who says, you know, it's 3-2, top of the third one out. And you got to keep people informed of that. You have to do it. And I love doing the radio still so much because it's just, you know, it's more old school than the TV. The TV, you know, changes a little bit from year to year too, with new innovations and new things they want us to do. I do like doing the games on television, but you know, radio is still that old school. It is, you know, style of broadcasting, which I really enjoy.
Paint the picture. Well, you're a professor at Emerson, right? Still, sports communication. Is that true?
I am. Yes.
Oh.
Yes, I am. We just finished the semester. I'll split it up, doing it remotely and in person. When the season ends, I come back and do it in person, and before that, I do it remotely. Then we're getting ready to start the second semester, unfortunately, remotely because of COVID.
We were talking, Roger and I, before you jumped in, and I mentioned something in the book I had seen. And
yeah. Sherm said you'd like more teams. Tim, is that the case?
I think it's going to happen. I think we're going to start hearing more and more about expansion just as soon as they settle the stadium issue with Oakland and Tampa Bay. Those are the two most pressing issues I think that Major League Baseball has outside of the current labor situation. And I know that they want to get those things settled. I do think that baseball is going to look different in a few years. There won't be pitchers hitting anymore. For starters, I believe, although I do prefer the National League style, I think we're going to go to the American League style because of the Players Union. I think that once they settle, whether Oakland stays in Oakland or they move to Las Vegas, because it's going to be one or the other, once that's settled, and then I think once they decide that this splitting Montreal and Tampa Bay idea is ridiculous and they got to pick one or the other, probably, hopefully Montreal, maybe Nashville, that maybe that's going to be the way to go. But once that's settled, I think we'll have at least two new markets, and I think we'll have some realignment in baseball as well.
Roger, you want to ask about this year's team coming up?
No, I know they're going to win it as long as Tim stays there. I'm about to press my button on DraftKings once he tells me he's back for another year for sure.
Right.
No question about it.
Just keep telling my bosses that, Roger. That helps.
There you
Okay.
go.
I guess we should let people know how they can get the book, Tim. What's the best way?
Yeah, it's wherever books are sold. I know, you know, the New Hampshire Barnes and Nobles, I guess they're in there. I know they're around the country. Amazon's a great way to get it. That's the way I tell everybody, the easiest way to get it. We do offer signed, personalized copies too, because of the lack of book signings that are available now at the bookstores due to COVID. We basically do them virtually, I guess you could say. But if they look me up on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook and just send me a direct message, I'll get back to them and tell them how they can get a signed, personalized copy or multiple copies. If people buy, you know, for groups like 10 or more, we'll do a private Zoom session too and talk about the book and things like that. But the easiest thing is to go through social media, through Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, and then I'll personally sign them, and I actually personally run them to the post office too.
There you go.
I ran one just yesterday. I ran one. So,
well, if anybody's got Audible, I tell them pick it up on Audible. It's a good listen, as I like to say. You got Tim Neverett doing COVID curveball. One thing I was thinking about in that book, you mentioned that you had a conversation with Harry Callis just a short time before he passed away, and of course, legendary Phillies announcer. You know, I was thinking this is for a sequel, Tim. Okay, now you got contact with a lot of broadcasters, a lot of guys that are veterans for sure, like a Bob Eucher, Pat Hughes, people like that. Get into their heads, write it down. I really, there was a book years ago called Voices of Sports, and this goes back to the 70s, and they had guys at the time Pat Summerall, Gowdy, and people like that. There's been nothing in between. So this is a chance. This is your sequel, man. I'll buy the first copy.
Well, I tell you what, Pat Hughes is such a neat guy. You bring him up, the Cubs announcer. He is about as old school as they get.
Mm-hmm.
And I love talking to Pat Hughes. We share baseball information whenever we're together in Chicago. Last couple of years, neither of us have traveled. So this year, I think when we go back to traveling, it's going to be wonderful to reconnect. But I've had great conversations with him in the past. And, when he was working with the late, great Ron Santo, there was just nothing but a piece of plexiglass that separated me and Ron. And something would happen in a game, he'd knock on the window and make a face, and I'd do the same. He was just a great guy, and Pat would sometimes look over and make a face. But getting the chance to talk to those guys is great. Bob Euger, for whatever reason, Bob took a liking to me. I don't know. We've had some funny conversations, and I love seeing him. I said, Bob, you're looking good. He'd be like, yeah, not bad for a guy that's put together with used lawnmower parts. And he makes the face, So I said to him when the anniversary of Major League was out, I did an interview with him for our radio pregame once. And I said, hey, tell us about Major League. And, he told me how they worked around his schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They did. I mean, for one supporting character, they worked a lot around his schedule, but he said that a lot of it was ad lib. And he goes, have you heard of Major League 3? I go, yeah. He goes, that one never even made the theaters. He goes, it went direct to airplanes. And he goes, not even the real ones. He goes, I think it's on a Piper Cub somewhere. And he makes the face, But he is just one of a kind. You could sit and talk with him for hours. He's just, that's why I love going to Milwaukee. I really do. It's one of my favorite things to do in baseball is to go to Milwaukee and sit with him and listen to his stories.
Well, these guys, you got to pick their brains. You brought up Ron Santo. When I had the Major League Baseball package years ago, a radio package, I used to love to listen to those guys out there. And some of the stories Santo would come up with, oh my, it just break me up. He's got one that was a classic, a soft serve ice cream machine in San Diego that went crazy on him. You'll have to ask Hughes about that one. I mean, Hughes was on, and the time he lost his wallet, and I think it was at Wrigley. That was another story. It went on quite a while in the game, but I mean, it brought tears to your eyes laughing. I mean, just the end of it. You ask Pat Hughes about those. The other thing you brought up is color commentators, whether it's Hershiser, Garciaparra. We lost one here, Jerry Remy, the Rem Dog. Any thoughts about the Rem Dog?
He's the greatest. I mean, what can you say? I mean, he was unbelievable. I had known Jerry when I was with the Pirates. We used to occasionally combine resources for spring training games. So it'd be like me, Don Orsillo, Bob Walk, and Jerry Remy, the four of us. Our TV crew and the Nesson crew would combine, and then we would, have three announcers in the booth at one time. Like I'd do a few innings, Don would do a few innings. And we did this probably 3 or 4 times, or 5 or 6 times, I guess. And so I got to work with Jerry. And, growing up, I knew who Jerry was. I loved watching him play. And then, of course, watched him a lot as a broadcaster. Got to meet him before. And now I'm working with the guy. And we're having some laughs and having some fun. And it's just great, right? So when I got the job with the Red Sox, he was one of the first guys to call me. And when I left, he was also the first guy to call me and tell me how disappointed he was that I was leaving, how much he wanted me to stay, that kind of thing. And he was just such a great guy. He's got a friend. Jerry's done all kinds of things, but Jerry has a friend who's very, very, very wealthy, who has a home in Colorado, but kept a private plane in Portsmouth on the seacoast, right? So there'd be a road trip each year where this guy would take Jerry, and then Jerry would take whoever he wanted. So a few years in a row, he asked me and Joe Castiglione and Dave O'Brien to go with him. So here we are on this private Gulfstream 4 with Jerry, away from the team. Now we think the team charter is pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Now we know how rock stars live. And when we went, And we had such fun. We had so many great laughs. And Jerry really would let his hair down when it was just the four of us around, plus his good friend. And we really had fun. Just some of the great stories.
Roger, before we wrap up here, did you have anything else that you wanted to throw to Tim?
No, I guess Tim knows now that it's much harder to write than it is to broadcast. Hey, let me write the next one.
Yeah, well, go for it. And well, after Tim finishes doing the next one, the one I recommend is the announcers, the broadcasters, and then how about the play-by-play? Then do the color guys afterwards. You've got some talent there, like I say, between Hershiser, Mundy, you guys, whoever you bump into along the way, those guys, get those stories and document them, because once they're gone, unfortunately.
I was going to say, the guy you need to is Dennis Eckersley. He speaks his own language.
Yeah, true.
And he's really funny. He's just great. I was really lucky when I was with the Red Sox to spend time with Dennis. You talk about stories. He's got a million of them. And, he faces the Kirk Gibson story almost every day. And he tells it in great detail. It's amazing to hear it out of his mouth in private. It's really, really cool.
Well, we all look forward to that equipment truck heading from Lansdowne to Florida. When do they shift the equipment to spring training for the Dodgers? When's that happen?
Later than the Red Sox do, because it's only a 5-hour drive.
Oh, okay.
It's a short drive. It's good. I mean, I'll tell you what, though, as much as I love Florida for spring training, and believe me, we love Florida for spring training. Fort Myers is great. When I was with the Pirates, Bradenton area, awesome. For the baseball standpoint, Arizona's way better. Our shortest drive, I mean, we share a facility with the White Sox, so we don't have to go anywhere for those games. Our longest drive is 45 minutes to play the Cubs.
Wow.
In Florida, our shortest drive was 45, 50 minutes.
Wow.
And the longest one was up to 3 hours if we went across the state to West Palm. So I love Arizona for the baseball side of things, but I love Florida for the everything else part of spring training.
There you go. Well, we're looking forward to the baseball season kicking off here. And in the meantime, there's that spot between New Year's Day and the time when you guys actually start calling games at spring training. Good reason for people to pick up COVID Curveball by Tim Neverett. Well, you did a great job, and it's a very entertaining book. A look at that World Championship season that was a COVID curveball for sure for all of us, but in particular Major League Baseball. But the Dodgers came out on top, and that
on the book too. It's not all about the Dodgers too. It's mostly about the Dodgers, but there are Red Sox stories in there.
Oh, yeah.
There's other baseball stories in there. So I think any baseball fan would enjoy it.
It is a baseball fan's book and a good read. So COVID Curveball, Tim Neverett, thank you. And Roger Brown, thanks for bringing us together today on the Seco Sports Forum. Happy and healthy 2022 to all of us, and you guys in particular. Be sure to subscribe to Exeter TV on YouTube and hit the bell to get notified about new episodes of the Seco Sports Forum and other local content. Follow the Sports Forum team behind the scenes on our Facebook and Twitter pages, and send us your game footage and photos to our email. That's secosportsforum.extv@gmail.com. This is Sherm Chester inviting you to join us for the next edition of the Seco Sports Forum.